What is up, everybody? Welcome back. I hope you're all having a great day whenever you're watching this. We've got a great video in store for you today, and as you know, we've been talking to some college football, some schools around the country trying to get some offseason updates. And today, thank you so much, Quentin, for coming on. He's going to be representing the University of Missouri. The Tigers have been on the come up the last 2 years. I mean, it's been impressive too, and especially impressive this last year. And they look to have an impressive 2024 campaign now, and with the 12-team playoffs. Quinn, would you like to just introduce yourself a bit before we get into this?
Yeah, my name is Quentin Corpuel. I am a sophomore from Bethesda, Maryland. So it's a Maryland suburb about 25 minutes outside of the nation's capital. I'm a journalism major here at Mizzou. I'm on the reporting and writing track, and I would like to cover sports for a living, which is becoming an increasingly more terrifying endeavor as the years go on. But I love it a lot, and I get to do cool things like this, like talk to Mr. Sam from formerly Dunk City, Florida Gulf Coast University. I got really excited when I saw that name because it had been a while since I thought about FGCU. But
It's been
I'm
as
really
long as
excited.
anybody has.
Yeah, I'm really excited for today. I'm excited to talk about Mizzou because, as you said, Sam, they're on the come up. They've definitely been on the come up over this last few months, and recruiting has definitely been good. It's been good over the last few years, but it was
Yeah,
especially good
it's
after
really
a really
taken a
good
step up.
season. And they have a nice transfer portal class coming in, so I'm excited to talk about the future of the program.
Yeah, of course. And, thank you so much for coming on again. Really appreciate you taking your time to be here. Like you just said, recruiting's been on the come up, and I think that's a great place to start. They landed, according to 24/7 at least, it was about like the 20, in the 20th range. It was a top 25 class again for recruiting, and it's been like that consistently ever since they landed Luther Burden a few years ago, five-star receiver, one of my personal favorite players in all of college football. I think he's just amazing. They got 21st this year with another five-star recruit coming in. It's been impressive. It really has. And that's the first thing I want to ask you is what has kind of shifted in these last few years since landing Luther? Now the classes have really jumped significantly almost. They've always kind of been a middle of the pack recruiting team, but in the SEC, that's not going to cut it. If you want to compete up there with the top programs, you're going to need classes like this. And what do you think has changed these last few years to allow them to get there?
Well, Eli Drinkwitz has always been a really, really good recruiter. This past season was the first time Mizzou had turned that good recruiting into really good results. Obviously, going 11-2, finishing in the top 10 of the AP poll, and defeating Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. This was the first season that turned into really positively tangible results. The previous two seasons, 2021, previous three seasons
Yeah.
did not end up like that. They were all middle of the pack seasons, and you could argue that 2022 they easily could have won 9 games, but last
Right.
season was the first season it really all came together. And you're looking at now, they land a five-star recruit in the 2022 recruiting class, Luther Burden, from St. Louis, which I think was a huge deal because for a lot of years, a lot of the talent in the state of Missouri went elsewhere, especially into the SEC. But since Drinkwitz got here, he's placed a heavy emphasis on locking down the in-state talent, and that started with St. Louis. I mean, you look at this past year: Brady Cook, St. Louis; Cody Schrader, St. Louis; Luther Burden, St. Louis; Mookie Cooper, St. Louis. And you look at some of the guys that are returning this year. They get Toriano Pride as a transfer from
Yeah, he's good.
Clemson. He's
I
from
like
the
him.
St. Louis area. And those are the only ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But even looking across the state in Kansas City, Williams Nonaneri is from the Lee Summit area,
That's a big
and
get for them too. He's one of the top players in the class, number one edge rusher, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, he is a very versatile and talented edge rusher piece that again is in state. And I think Drinkwitz has done a very good job of locking that in-state talent down and telling the other programs that have been plucking talent from Missouri over the past few years, hey, you can't just go shopping freely here whenever you want. So these past few years have been really excellent recruiting wise. And Burden said right after he recruited that he really wanted to start building a St. Louis to Mizzou pipeline. He really wanted to start strengthening it. And I could totally see that happening
It
in the
it sure
coming
looks
years.
that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's been impressive. And look, it's one thing to be in the SEC and to be able to recruit, but Drinkwitz plays a big part in this too because recruiting them is half the battle, developing them and fielding a competitive team is the other half. And there are several teams around the conference. I won't name names, but cough, Florida Gators, who aren't quite developing the talent right away to put them on the field and deliver the on-state result. I mean, I'm personally a Florida State fan, and the other kid I do this with is Florida Gators, and another is Miami. So we're pretty spread out over the state. as far as fandom goes. But you know, Drinkwitz has done a great job developing. Burden has come in and been an instant star. We'll see what guys like I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, Nweri. Um, we'll see how guys like that do. But Drinkwitz has done a great job of developing talent and progressing in wins each year, and it's been really impressive to see, honestly.
Yeah, I'll just quick note. I actually grew up a Miami Hurricane, funny
Did you
enough.
really?
Yeah, my parents met there, so without the U, I would probably not exist.
Oh,
So I have a special place in my heart for the University of Miami. So that's actually really funny that the three of you
yeah,
are Florida State, Miami.
right. We're all split up all over the place.
That's funny. But yeah, no, did you ask a question? I was caught up in the
I
Miami
kind
thing for like another 60
I
seconds
mean,
after you
I
said
kind
that.
of just wanted your personal take on like what you've observed personally about Drinkwitz and just his ability to develop. I mean, it feels like it's come out of nowhere. I mean, Mizzo's just progressed so quickly. It's really taken me by surprise. I'm just not sure what has changed in the program. Drinkwitz seems to have worked quite the magic these last few years, and I was wondering just what kind of insight have you had just from observing the program a lot closer than I have as to what is changing in the culture and just what is changing overall about the program.
Yeah, so if you look at last year's team, a lot of the key contributors had been at Mizzou for a long time. You look at even like Brady Cook was there in 2021. You look at a lot of the defensive contributors, especially Darius Robinson, Chris Abrams-Drain, Ennis Rakestraw, Chad Bailey. Those guys have been at Mizzou since some of them since 2020. Some of them committed in 2018, 2019, and they had been at the bottom of the depth chart. They had been through a lot of adversity, but guess what? They didn't leave. And I'm not here to poo-poo the transfer portal or NIL or anything.
No, yeah.
I don't want to be the old man yelling at clouds. I think it's an awesome development for college football, but they stuck around because they
And it does
believed in
hurt
themselves.
programs that are historically in Mizzou's category where you're in the middle, you're not quite the top of the SEC just yet. That's the programs that the transfer portal and NIL has hurt historically.
Yeah, and you even look at the guys that hadn't been there as long as Robinson and Abrams Drain and Ennis Rakestraw, even Brady Cook. I mean, 2022 was, I don't want to say a disaster. That would be a over exaggeration, but it
Right.
was a very less than ideal. He got hurt very early in the season. He was playing with a torn shoulder. He was playing with a torn labrum in his throwing shoulder for most of the season, and he was in an offense where he didn't have a lot of time to throw. He didn't have a sturdy rushing attack to lean on, and he was throwing to receivers that weren't really open that much. And you look at this season, that personnel obviously got way better. They bring in a new offensive coordinator, Kirby Moore from Fresno State, who took over play calling duties from Drinkwitz, who admitted that balancing head coaching and offensive coordinator duties, it's hard.
It
It's
is.
really
It's a lot,
difficult.
and not a lot of people have success doing that.
Yeah. And so he gave up the reins to the offense to Kirby Moore. And the first couple of games to start this past season were a little rough against South Dakota and Middle Tennessee State, especially against Middle Tennessee State. One, because Middle Tennessee State has historically given Mizzou trouble. They took them to overtime back in, I think it was the early mid 2000s. I can't remember exactly what year. And then on homecoming in 2016, walked into Furrow Field and hung 51 on Mizzou in a defeat. So Middle Tennessee has historically given, honestly, like they've historically given a lot of Power Five teams trouble. Look at Miami, for
They beat,
example.
yeah, I was gonna say they beat Miami last. Was it last
They didn't
year?
beat them. They kicked their butt.
Yeah,
Like that game
in
was
Miami too, if I'm
that
not
game was
wrong.
okay in Miami. I don't know how much pull that has nowadays, but
Facts. That stadium is as empty as can be.
but you know, the first couple of games were rough, and before the Kansas State game, which was the following game after Middle Tennessee State, Brady Cook's name was announced in the starting lineup. Student section boos him. They really want Sam Horn to start. They want Sam Horn to start really badly. And what does Brady Cook do? Goes out and has the best game of his career, and Mizzou beats Kansas State. And Drinkwitz after the game is,
Game-winning field goal, if I'm not wrong, right?
yep, game-winning
Yeah.
61-yarder from Harrison Mevis. Fans stormed the field. My first field storming that I've ever witnessed in person. It was
I'm
pretty
jealous
cool.
of that. I'd love to storm a field.
But afterwards, Drinkwitz is like, "Hey guys, what you said about Brady Cook was really mean, and I hope you feel ashamed of yourselves." And his teammates were like, "Yeah, we've seen it in him this entire time. He's got it. We've been trying to tell you all for like over a year." And then obviously they have the season that they have. I think just the biggest difference was the togetherness.
Mm-hmm.
A culture is a word that's thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
It's a very easy word to lean on when you look at the difference from a team from year X to year Y, or just a team from of the previous year
Yeah.
to the next year. But guys were so they wanted to play for each other. Like they really wanted to play for each other. They wanted to see each other succeed. And I think a lot of that has been built on guys being at the bottom and then getting to where they were this season. They just wanted to see each other win because they had not reached this level of football over their entire collegiate careers. So it made me very happy to see, especially because a lot of the guys on this year's team were like amazing people, like genuinely amazing people that are so easy to talk to and so easy to root for. And I think that that's one of the biggest parts, if not the biggest part, of Mizzou's success this past season.
Yeah, and it's been really interesting seeing, obviously, with Cook and Burden both back for one more year. Um, at least one more year in Burden's case. You want to see it build. You want to see it build off of this, and with a 12-team playoff, and we'll talk about it in a few minutes, but not the hardest schedule I've ever seen as far as SEC teams go. A transfer class is going to be really important to build on the success. And I look at their class; they got some pretty good guys coming in. You land Caden Green, the offensive tackle from Oklahoma. That was a really good one to land because he was a beast at Oklahoma in his freshman year, and he comes in as a highly touted transfer prospect. Toriano Pride, a guy you mentioned before. Just out of all these transfers who are coming in the ninth ranked class in the country, are there any that you see as instant impact? Because for me, in my opinion, I see Caden Green as instant impact, helping you in the trenches. Are there any other players that you see and you're like, these guys are also going to have a really big impact right away?
Yeah, no, Caden Green's definitely a good place to start. You'd lose Javon Foster on the left side of the offensive line. He was the left tackle for several years here at Mizzou. So I think basically getting a replacement that might be even better than him is very optimal, especially considering how good Mizzou's offensive line was last season and how much that helped them on offense. Javon Foster, his PFF grade was always a little higher than I always thought, but he was really solid. And you would always take a solid offensive line 7 out of 7 days of the week. There are a lot of teams, college and professional, that if they had a better offensive line than they did, things would be way, way, way nicer. So I think getting Caden Green in the portal was especially huge. I think if you look elsewhere in the transfer portal, Toriano Pride, I did mention earlier, is going to be a huge addition, especially with the losses of Abrams Drain and Rakestraw. They have a lot of young talent in the secondary that I think could really thrive under new defensive coordinator Corey Batoon, whose defensive formation places a lot of emphasis on the cornerbacks being really successful in many facets of the game. So I think Toriano Pride is definitely going to help with that. I think another transfer that I look at and I get really excited about is actually Nate Noel, the running back
The
from
running back who they're gonna need because Schrader has a lot of production that he's leaving on the table now that he's not there next year, and yeah, it's gonna be by committee. It seems like.
Yeah, you look at Nate Noel, and then you also look at Marcus Carroll, the running back transfer from Georgia State. There is no replacing Cody Schrader.
Yeah,
That's not going to happen. Cody Schrader is Cody Schrader. Marcus Carroll is only Marcus Carroll, and Nate Noel is only Nate Noel. But I think you hear thunder and lightning pretty often when you talk about running backs. I think that
yeah.
Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel can definitely be a thunder and lightning. I think Carroll, if anyone's expected to get a lion's share of the carries, it's going to be Carroll. And then Noel, I think at least to start, I would expect to be more of a third down receiving back, especially considering his frame. He doesn't really look built to handle 20 something carries a game, even though that's what Drinkwitz has really liked out of his running backs since he's come to Mizzou, is not running them into the ground, but giving them a lot
A
of
lot of
volume.
carries. Yeah.
So it's definitely going to be different, but I think Noel brings something different in terms of speed and quickness. I mean, he's obviously lighter than a lot of the Mizzou running backs that have come through the program over the past few years. But I think it'll be interesting to see how they divvy up the workload. But they both offer unique traits. They both offer something different from one another. So I'm super excited to see them play.
Yeah, it should be interesting because, I mean, like we just said, it's a lot of production to make up for. But if you do it by committee and you've got the right guys, it's not the impossible task. But, On3 has tracked the transfer portal since 2022. Missouri has sat in like the mid to low 30s, really. And then this year they jump all the way up to 9. I'm just curious, what has been the change in the approach to the portal? Is there specific reasons? Is it just more emphasis because you need to have more emphasis on it? What's been the change in the approach to the transfer portal?
Well, I think the team's good now, and you want to go to a place where you're gonna where you're gonna have success. So
Right.
I think that's definitely one reason. And I will shout out NIL a little bit
Yeah.
because Missouri's been super progressive about that. I mean,
They
you
just
look
got a
at
huge donation the other day.
well, I mean, that's just a donor having $62 million lying around, being
Right.
like, you know what, I want to see a way nicer 4-0 field. And then here's $10 million left over. The conspiracy theories on who donated that $62 million have been
I
swirling.
heard it was a specific man with some Denver Broncos ties.
Oh,
No,
no, that was the first person I thought of. I
it's not.
he's the most. No, well, I can't say if he is
Right.
or isn't,
Okay.
but I feel like that would not happen considering who the person is and
Maybe.
his current relationship with the state of Missouri and specifically the St. Louis area. So he would be the number one candidate considering how much money is probably in his bank account, but I don't think it was him. But I mean, again, that's just a side note. That's the unintended consequence of
Yeah.
being good is donors
Is
who
you
have a
have
lot of.
donors who are willing to help you field a team that's going to continue to compete. I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with that in this landscape. I mean, you're thankful for the donors that you get, and with powerful donors behind you, anything is possible with the right coach as well.
Totally. And I mean, going back to NIL, like
Yeah.
Missouri last August, they signed a new bill that basically said, hey, if you sign with Mizzou out of high school, you can pursue NIL opportunities right away. And look, I've done 4 or 5 school projects on why college athletes should be paid.
Yeah.
And one of my main arguments was always, hey, college athletics are different in that it rakes in so much money.
Exactly. It's ridiculous.
And B, the peak of an athlete's value is when they're 20, 19 versus you
Yeah.
look at other professions like being a doctor or a lawyer or really any like
Your peak is 10 years or so down the line at least. But yeah, right.
exactly.
You're right. As a college athlete, you're in your athletic prime. You haven't been ran into the ground yet in a lot of running backs' case. The time is now to profit off of your
And you
off
look
of
at just the percentage of college athletes that end up playing professionally, and it
yeah.
is minute. It is so small. So this is where they're most valuable. And look, financial stability at the end of the day is inherently, whether you want to admit it or not, something you want to like put at the very
Yeah.
top of your priority list, especially if you're not going to be playing professionally, because being a college athlete is pretty much a full-time job. And that's not to say you can get a degree while you're here, like you can.
Yeah.
College athletes have done that don't play professionally have gone on to do amazing things at any school across America. But it's hard. Like
Yeah.
it's really hard when you consider the day to day. So Missouri's been super progressive about that. I mean, you look at the guys that already have NIL deals. Luther Burden's on. He's got his own bag of chips. He's got to deal with Emo's Pizza, which is a St. Louis-based pizza chain. Brady Cook has a deal with Emo's. Cody Schrader has a few. I think Nick Honor, one of the basketball players, just got a thing with a law firm, which I was
Oh wow.
actually really surprised that didn't happen earlier. But I mean, Mizzou's got a lot of opportunities compared to a lot of other places, and I think the schools like Mizzou that are embracing NIL quicker are going to have the most success because that's what collegiate athletics are
It sure
nowadays.
seems that way.
So I think Missouri's been super progressive about that, and I definitely think that's helped a lot.
Yeah. One last question before we move on to the 2024 or 5 outlook. Are there any specific transfers you think the team is just going to miss that, it was a shame to see them go that are really going to leave, a gaping hole in the team next year? Do you see any transfers like that left the school?
Transfers are just people that departed,
No, I
period.
mean, departing is normal, but the transfer portal is different because you had the opportunity to stay and it's an unexpected loss. Are there any unexpected losses from people hitting the portal you think are going to hurt next year?
To be honest, not really. I mean,
Which is normal. I mean, that is normal. Not a lot of transfers are the big impact players.
yeah, which is that's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
The first person I thought of was Jabari Johnson. He was a dual threat quarterback that had a lot of potential. He just got buried on the depth chart, and now that Brady Cook was the guy last season, and he's going to be again this season. Just not a whole lot of opportunity there. And so I understand it. He transferred to Oregon State, where I think he will have a better shot of winning the starting quarterback battle. So that was
Yeah.
the first one I thought of. But again, Brady Cook looks to be the guy. And so I totally understand it. And I think both sides will be okay.
I mean, it happens. You're right. Oregon State lost all their players, so he almost assuredly will probably be their starter. Looking ahead to 2024, it's a promising year, really, not only because of just the progress that they made last year, but just the schedule in general. And I'll pull it up so everybody can see. If you look at the schedule, as far as SEC teams go, this is not, by any stretch of the imagination, a death row. You start off with, I think, in my opinion, 4 to 5 easy wins, 6 even if you want to go all the way, counting Texas A&M. And you end the season with South Carolina and Mississippi State. And I guess Arkansas down here too. For you, can you give me your floor, your actual prediction, and then a ceiling for the 2020 or 2024, 2025 season?
Yeah, I will say the schedule is really nice from a journalistic perspective because it's 4 games by, another 4 games by, and then finish the season with another 4 games, which is
Not to
great.
mention the first four are all at home too.
First 4 are all at home. That's super awesome. I love 4 football home games in a row because I have a limited amount of those as a college student. So thumbs up for me there. I think when you look at just the schedule as a whole, the Alabama game got significantly less tough when
Yeah,
Nick Saban
that's
left.
all of a sudden really winnable even on the road.
It's a lot more winnable than it was before. So if I were a Mizzou fan, that would make me a little happier. Oklahoma, I think that's going to be a super fun game. That's going to
Yeah,
be a really fun game. They haven't been to 4-0 in a while. Have they not been here since they were the number 1 team and got upset? I
I
think
can't see
I
any.
think
I
that
don't know another year off the top of my head the two teams would have played.
I think yeah, okay, I could very easily be wrong about that, but I think that was the last time they came to 4-0 Field. But anyway, yeah, the schedule is not super duper daunting. Alabama, it's going to be very very tough. I don't want to
Yeah,
gloss over that. It's going to be a very tough game. Oklahoma is going to be very tough, and look down towards the end of the schedule. I think, look, I think Texas A&M, like Kyle Fields, hard to play in.
it is. But how much is that roster going to be intact? They've lost a lot of impact. Basically, almost every 5-star from that 2022, world beater class has left for
Yeah,
other programs. So, I mean, with a new coach too in his first year in the SEC, what is Texas A&M going to look like right away? So, I mean, that's still very winnable. Arkansas loses KJ Jefferson to UCF. Mississippi State in a rebuild. South Carolina losing Spencer Rattler. They're in a rebuild. It's just a lot of rebuilding, kind of bottom tier SEC teams mixed in with some easy out of conference games, in my opinion.
yeah, I think a floor would be 8-4 probably.
That's what I put mine at the floor.
Yeah, I think the floor would be, let's say you lose, and this is totally on paper, lose to Alabama, Oklahoma, and then let's say Texas A&M's actually figured it out.
Right, yeah. And maybe Auburn, right? Like maybe you just drop the Auburn game and it just goes completely the wrong way.
So yeah, I think 8-4 is probably a floor. I would say right now on February 10th, 2024, I think 10 wins is very reasonable. I
Is that your
think
prediction?
right now, yeah, I've never
Okay.
been one to have the utmost confidence and be like, yeah, I think after one good season, I think the moon is a possibility. Let's just get out of the
Because
Earth's
I put
atmosphere.
10-2 as my prediction too. So we've been in lockstep with both the floor and the prediction so far.
Yeah, I think we should, if we're shooting for the moon, we should get out of Earth's atmosphere first.
Right.
So I'm not going to be out here predicting 11-1, 12-0 with shades on and my nicest outfit on, if that makes any sense at all. But yeah, I think 10 wins is very reasonable. Right now, I think that Alabama game is going to be super tough, and Oklahoma's going to be pretty good again. I
It's
think
going to
that's
hinge on what Jackson Arnold can do in his first year starting. The five
yeah,
star, he looked, I'm not going to judge him off a bowl game, right? It's his first start. He looked fine, but is he going to take the step that others are hoping that he takes in his first full year as a starter? That's going to be really what it comes down to in terms of how good Oklahoma is this year.
yeah. And you look at Oklahoma, there's a lot of uncertainty. Whereas you look at Mizzou, yeah, they lose a good bit of guys, but they actually have a surprising amount of continuity for the amount of
And
guys they
filled their
lost to
holes
the
pretty
NFL.
quickly, too.
Yeah, I mean the most of the offense returns in
Yeah.
terms of quarterback, and the entire wide receiver room is back. I cannot tell you how awesome
That's important. That
that
is
is going
really
to be
important to have the entire receiver room come back.
with the same offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
That's huge as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of continuity within Mizzou, more than people expect. Even on the defensive end, yeah, they lost their 2 top cornerbacks, their best edge rusher, their best defensive lineman period in Darius Robinson, and a lot of the defensive tackles that had helped make Mizzou's defense really successful over these past couple of seasons. I mean, you look at the guys that they had on the interior that aren't going to be there anymore. You look at Realist George Jr. and Jaden Jernigan and Josh Landry, those guys just ate up space. And going against that, not like I'm an offensive tackle or anything. I have the build of Gumby. But I mean, going up against 6'4", 320, 330 every single game, like for 60 minutes. That's a lot. Like that
Yeah.
is a lot to deal with. And that's not there anymore. They have a lot of, you look at the defensive line room right now, and it's a lot of edge rushers. And it's a lot of guys that I don't see the kind of versatility that there was last season. I think Williams Nwaneri, I'm very curious to see where he plays on the defensive line.
Right.
But they just had a lot of like big guys. And Christian Williams is coming back for another season, and that's going to be huge. But on the interior, there are a lot more question marks than there have been over the past couple of seasons. But you even look at on the back end, like the defensive formation Corey Batum plays, it's a 3-3-5. So it's a lot of defensive backs on the field.
So yeah, the TCU style defense.
Yeah, but like Pride's coming over. Drayden Norwood is probably going to start on the other side, if that were my best guess. And Dalen Carnell's back for another season. Joseph Charleston's back for another season. And Marvin Burks has another season under his belt. And they're getting a handful of corners in this upcoming recruiting class. I think Cameron Keys can be an interesting contributor, although I think he needs to gain a little bit of weight. I think right now he's listed at like 6 foot 160.
Damn.
Which isn't even 30 pounds heavier than I am.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's not a good thing. But I think he definitely has the corner skills to be able to contribute right away. I don't know in what capacity, but definitely be able to contribute right away. So I definitely think 10 wins is reasonable. And I don't know, man. UMass might be a fever dream. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to Amherst, but if I do, I will be recording my entire experience just to make sure it actually happened. And that it's a real place. That's how I felt about going to Vanderbilt last season with their combination active construction site.
Oh yeah, I couldn't imagine having to go there for games.
Yeah, I made sure to take a bunch of pictures just to make sure right now that I can confirm it does exist. That game did happen, and there are 2 neon green cranes.
I'm surprised that game is on the road, but I mean,
no, I think Mizzou football has high hopes for 2024. I think the playoff is definitely within the realm of possibilities, especially because 8 more teams are getting in.
Right, yeah, 100%. For me personally, I put the ceiling at 11-1. I feel like at the very best, it's unrealistic to say that they're go 2-0 between Alabama and Oklahoma 2 out of the 3 weeks in a row. But I feel like splitting those 2 games is not completely out of the realm of possibility. I feel like it's close enough to where I can call it a ceiling. And either way, at 10-2, that should be more than enough to get you into the playoffs. My problem is if it's 10-2 and those are your 2 losses, where do your quality wins come from on the schedule in terms of playoff seeding when we're debating 10-2 teams? But that's also a problem to take care of in December and January. That's not a problem to look at right now.
Yeah, I mean, if let's say they lose to their only 2 ranked matchups are Alabama and Oklahoma, and they lose both. I mean, looking right now, you would hope that some of your opponents end up doing better than expected,
or B, you Auburn or Texas A&M.
You just kick everybody else's butt and you lose close to Oklahoma and Alabama, and you're like, okay, well, we're right there. And so I definitely think that is a possibility. I will say something last year that had been different from previous years is that Mizzou won most of their swing games that were not decided early on. And they had a lot of trouble with swing games in the past, especially in 2022. That's why I said early on, I think it's easy to say that they could have easily won 9 games in 2022, just because of the amount of close losses that they had, especially the 2 against Auburn and Kentucky that felt like divine intervention took place, and it did not help Mizzou in terms of the missed field goal and the block punt, which literally catalyzed a rule change. And so I think when you look at the 2024 schedule, it looks a lot easier. There were a lot fewer swing games than there have been, especially in the past couple of seasons. So I definitely think double-digit wins are on the table once again.
Yeah, it should be a promising year. And that pretty much does it on my end. If you have anything else you'd like to add now before we wrap it up, feel free. If not, that's all I got for you today.
Well, I'll plug my socials so you can follow me. You can follow me at Quentin Corpuel on Twitter. It's QUENTINCORPUEL.
I'll make sure to link in the description.
Oh, okay, awesome. So yeah, you can follow me there on Twitter. I need to tweet more. I've been slightly better.
I know. I've been trying to get into it recently, but it's hard keeping up with it. Pretty much, like you have to be like on there all day.
Well, I also just don't really have that many thoughts about stuff.
That too. Yeah.
even if I do, I don't have a pressing need to share it with the entire world. So I'm slowly building that habit. I saw actually the one of the editors at the Florida student newspaper, Jackson Reyes. I'll shout him out. He made a Lonnie Walker Miami mixtape to Miguel and Travis Scott. And that was a lovely way to start my afternoon. So
Yeah.
I quote tweeted that, and I thanked him for his work. So it's getting better, but I'll try to do more. But yeah, if you want to follow me on X/Twitter, that's where you can find me. And you can also find my stuff. I've got bylines on Rock M Nation, which is the SB Nation affiliate for Mizzou. I will be covering the NFL draft, mostly just the Mizzou guys in the NFL draft the rest of the season. And if whatever ends up happening with Mizzou basketball, I'll be doing that. And sorry, I'll be covering Mizzou women's basketball to the end of the season too. So I'll be doing that over there. And then I have occasional columns on KCOU.FM. That is the student radio station here
Oh, nice.
on campus. And we got a website and we post columns on there. So I'll be having something about the Super Bowl, hopefully on Sunday or Monday. So I'm looking forward to that. But I appreciate you having me on, Sam.
Yeah, of course.
I
Thank you so much for
really
coming on.
enjoyed. Oop, I'm sorry.
Oh, I said thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, again, thank you for having me. I enjoyed the few minutes of Dunk City highlights I watched beforehand because I knew I was joining a Florida Gulf Coast. You guys are the Eagles?
Yeah, Eagles.
Oh my goodness! Sorry, I pride myself on knowing mascots of colleges. There's that one Sporkle quiz I like to do quite frequently. So that would have been
This
a
was a
little
pretty obscure
embarrassing.
one, so I don't blame you for hesitating.
Yeah, that would have been a little embarrassing if I came up short when it actually came time to apply that knowledge to a real world setting. But I appreciate you having me on, Sam, and I love that Drake.
Oh yeah, this is
album
a
will-
new one. I've been
Yeah,
trying to make it more homey in here.
nice. Yeah, he's him and Rihanna really have been like the LeBron-esque
Yeah,
longevity throughout both of our lives. So
you're not wrong.
I like
Plus,
those.
some recent Twitter trending stuff makes it good timing to have the tapestry in the background.
Yeah, no, I like the if you look at the top row, I like albums 2 and 3 on there. I love the Thank Me Later and Marvin's Room. Those are my two personal favorites. So
Me personally, I'm only probably bumping about 2 of these. So
really,
yeah, the rest are just kind of there because they're included. I don't know, but
all right,
yeah,
fair
trying to make it
enough.
more homey. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm gonna make sure to link your socials in the description, guys. Remember, like the video, subscribe, and comment what you want to see more of. Because especially with the off season and dead period now, gonna keep trying to cater more to you. Just whatever we can scrape together. But yeah, thank you so much, and I'll have to speak to you after the spring game or something so we can see what Missouri is really gonna look like going into next year.
Yeah, that shouldn't be too long from now. Eli
I don't.
Drinkwitz
It should be
loves.
what, April, right?
No, well,
Am I
he loves
mistaken?
the spring games earlier than everybody else. So yeah,
All
let's
right.
definitely connect when that happens.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much. Until next time.